Kneel Before Blog presents Kneel Before Pod.
Movie Hello Stranger, among others. The conversation covers the evolution of interactive storytelling, how to plan the different scenarios, and the potential future of cinema screenings. Sit back, relax, and enjoy. I'm delighted to be joined by Paul Raschid, director of, most recently, Hello Stranger. How are you doing?
I'm great, Craig. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing good. It's not raining, so we're all good.
It's always a good sign that when you're in the UK.
Yeah. We actually had an interaction online in 2018. We were talking offline about the Edinburgh Film Festival. I reviewed White Chamber.
Oh, okay. Wonderful. Yeah. That's what I was there with.
You tweeted quite thoughtfully about my reviews because I pointed out some things that I felt didn't work, and you said that it was a very fair review. I do think about that interaction because I like to be fair but not brutal like some reviewers are.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We make art, we make something creative. It's all subjective. And the longer I've been in the industry, the more I realize that feedback can be very helpful. You can tell when it's something that's completely unhelpful, but when it's well thought out, well considered, I always value that. Yeah, no, thank you for that.
Well, it's what I try and do. I try and be fair, try and see every element of something. And if things work, I like to call them out. If things don't work, I like to do it constructively, or I try to.
Yeah, absolutely.
So a bit of background on yourself. What made you get into directing? What drew you to that particular career?
Well, I always wanted to be in the film industry in some way. My first passion was actually acting, and I had the privilege of growing up in the film industry in a sense. My dad was a cinema operator when I was growing up. So through my formative years, I was just in the cinema all the time watching films. And then when I became a teenager, he started getting into independent film production. So I spent a lot of time on his film sets, seeing the process in front and behind the camera. So not only was I interested in what was going on in front of the camera, I was also having a passive interest in what was going on behind the camera. So it was something that kind of was always there. And then when I came to choosing university subjects, I wanted to study film as well. So I did English literature with film studies at university. So it's not something I've always been really interested in, but I was spending my time where I wanted to fit into it, because I had an interest everywhere. And then after university, I was writing my own screenplays. I was embarking to try and be an actor, and I got into directing as well. So I started my career kind of having these three horses running at the same time, working in front and behind the camera. And then just as the years have gone on, where the cars have fallen, I've found myself being more drawn towards directing, really. And that's where my passion is very much so now. And I absolutely love it. I've been so fortunate to be doing it for the past 10 years. So that's the journey.
And putting your attention into acting early on, that must make working with actors a lot easier, because you understand what instructions they might want.
Oh, absolutely. I think it's invaluable, to be honest. I went into auditions and I worked with other directors. I worked with casting directors. And I think that's such an important experience that has really molded me into understanding the mindset of an actor, what an actor goes through. So whenever we have auditions, even at that stage of the process, I know what they feel like on the other side of the table. It's been so helpful to build that empathy and understand what they may be going through, what they may be wondering, what their thought process may be, what they would have gone through to prepare with the text before they've come in. And I always, especially now, and I've actually even, this is a slight tangent, but extension of what we're talking about. But in the last 2-3 years, I've been really getting into editing myself. And that is something I wish I'd done earlier as well. And now I think that all directors should have experience in acting, writing, and editing before they start directing themselves, because just understanding those processes from a technical level and doing it myself has made me a far better director. Sort of go off on a tangent on your original question, but yeah, I'm just learning every year.
I welcome all tangents, so not to worry about that. I guess it gives you a better sense of structure then if you see how it's all put together as well, if you're not trying to guess at how that works.
Absolutely. And I think it just means that on set, you're just that bit quicker and that bit sharper with knowing when you've got what you need, or if, for instance, something's gone wrong, there's a technical, the weather's gone bad, or for whatever reason, you have to drop shots. It just means that you can think quicker on your feet, being like, okay, I think this will work in the edit, or that will work in the edit, or I just need this one shot to make it work. I think it's just made me quicker and sharper on set than I was before. It just takes you to that extra level, having a real technical understanding of what a timeline looks like and what you can do, and doing it yourself, basically.
And you mentioned auditioning. Is it gone back to in-person auditions? Because I've talked to a bunch of actors that said that it pretty much switched entirely to they do a tape and send it in rather than being in the room.
Yeah, it's a really big discussion point. I was actually having a conversation with an actor friend of mine about that recently. I think it's very much a hybrid. Tapes are used quite a lot to speed up the process. I think the way it was before was that you would have your first round of auditions being in person quite a lot of the time, which I don't really favor myself, again, as an actor and as a creative, because I think you could have an actor come in and, very quickly they're not quite right. Nothing personal or anything to do with the performance, but they're not what may fit the ensemble around them. And then it's 20 minutes that they've prepared for and you've prepared for that you kind of lose in an audition. Whereas if you do a first round of tapes, they can do their best work within their home. They don't need to spend money traveling. They don't need to make the investment in coming to an audition. And then the people you are calling back into the room are the ones that you feel are the best match for performance, creative, all of the other factors that come into these decisions. So I always prefer a hybrid model, and I think that's where it seems to be at the moment, which personally I think is superior to the way it was before, using tapes really smartly for that early part of the process and then using the in-person later, rather than using in-person across the board, which I think it was more the way it was before. So that's sort of my stance on that at the moment.
Yeah, there's nothing worse than spending a lot of time traveling somewhere when you know that it's pointless.
Exactly. It's as unfair for them as it is for everybody involved. So I think it's a lot better doing it that way around.
So your last few projects have been interactive movies. What's drawn you to working on those sorts of things? It's a relatively young medium, isn't it, this interactive release?
Yeah, absolutely. It was something that just came to me in 2019, actually, just after White Chamber had done its festival run and everything, and Shauna won the BAFTA Scotland and it got a Netflix deal. So it was quite a seminal project for my career in that sense, that it kind of put me on the map or the radar of other film producers. So I got approached by a producer called John Giwa'amu, based out of Wales, who had seen White Chamber and says, hey, I really like what you did there. I've got a project in a similar genre, similar structure, but it's interactive and I'd love you to pitch and consider you to direct for it. And I was like, yeah, that's really cool. Bandersnatch, the Black Mirror episode, had just come out, which was interactive, choose your own adventure. So that had really put the format on the map, so to speak, in everybody's consciousness. And I've always been a gamer as well. So I've always been interested in non-linear storytelling. Even White Chamber was non-linear in its storytelling. So it was something that my mind was already kind of geared towards in traditional linear film. So it was a challenge I wanted to jump on. And like you said, it's a really young medium. So it was a great challenge and really fun, because when you get a script and you have to figure out how you're going to direct one of these things, there's not as much rubric or blueprints of how to do these things like there are writing a traditional script. I mean, there are hundreds of books and past successful screenplays that you can study and read, and the rules of the game are quite well laid out in terms of writing a traditional script. Whereas with these, writing the script, directing, there wasn't that much that I could really reference. So I was sort of writing a language that worked for myself, and I've been doing it ever since. So it was an opportunity that came my way, and I guess the first couple I did worked. So I found myself in that niche, and I haven't really looked back.
Yeah, because we've had those FMV choose your own adventure games since early PlayStation.
So you know that term FMV? Fantastic.
Yeah, I'm a gamer too.
Oh, fantastic. That makes a big difference then.
They were always very schlocky, but it seems like in the past few years they've been taken more seriously, because I've encountered quite a few of them over the past few years, and it's serious actors with reputations and so on that are getting involved in them. So it seems to be a very novel way of telling a story.
Absolutely. The ones that I think you're referencing from the 90s, like you said, they were made on a budget in a certain genre and a certain style. But I guess at the time, I can't even imagine how difficult it must have been to make those at that time. So those guys, they were real trailblazers for what we're doing now, because now you've got Unity and you've got game engines and you're shooting on digital, and it's so many things to streamline the process. But definitely since about 2016, there's been a real resurgence within the format.
And how's it you prepare when you're doing scenes, because they can play out in a variety of ways? How's it you direct the actors to play it when the reactions can be a number of different ways? I suppose it's just a bunch of deleted scenes, but they can all exist. It might be a bit like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the way we shoot is that if you think about it like a flow chart. So for instance, if I step out onto the street, I choose to turn left or right, I turn left, and then I come to another crossroads and I have another choice of turning left or right. The way we would shoot is generally we would try and group things together as much as possible. So we would play me coming outside, having the choice about turning left or right, turning left, and then playing out having the other choice, turning left or right, then turning right, as if it was one long continuous scene, and then fill in the other branches that we hadn't shot. Basically, that's the way to kind of speed up the whole process. But a lot of it is, like I said, it was a style that my mind could wrap its head around quite easily, because I was used to gaming, non-linear, branching narratives. You have to try and find actors. That's something in the audition process. Finding actors whose brains work like that or can adapt very easily to thinking like that, whether they are gamers. I've found that having theatre experience makes a massive difference, because they are used to retaining that amount of text and improvising if they need to. If, say, there's an error on stage, they've had to adapt or improvise or do something that deviates away and then find their way back onto the narrative, the story that they're telling. I found that skill set translates really well over into this kind of storytelling, live theatre, basically. So I try and make sure that we cast actors who are, one, interested in this type of storytelling, and two, have the tools in their toolkit to be able to shift their minds into being able to branch off. And sometimes they're going to have to branch off emotionally into two very different directions from the same place. So it requires a bit of thought and planning in that sense.
Yeah, I can imagine that some actors wouldn't like to have to learn essentially 3 or 4 different scripts in terms of preparing how to emotionally react to different scenarios.
Exactly, especially if there's one that they're like, I don't believe in it. I don't believe in this way. And then you have to put your gamer hat on and be like, look, the thing when you give agency to an audience, the what if of when you give agency to an audience is infinite. Their mind will go all sorts of places about, oh, what happens if I did that? This is the logical thing to do, but what if I did that? It's like when you see them running around on GTA. That's the purest form of what I'm talking about, where sometimes they'll drive the car and drive the speed limit, but then they'll also want to try and jump off a bridge or something like that. That's the thing that I always try and impart onto actors. Some of these may seem illogical to you and the way you think the character is, but all of these options will be things that a gamer or a viewer wants to explore if you give them the option to do it.
Plus, it's, I think, becoming more common for actors, on big films anyway, to have to come back and just shoot something that was completely different to what they were expecting.
Exactly, yeah.
So I suppose its skills are transferable, like you said, from different disciplines, I suppose. And I think it's interesting that it's being taken seriously as a medium because, like I said, those schlocky FMV games, one that comes to mind for some reason is Psychic Detective. I just remember how cheesy that was.
Yeah.
I remember playing it. And it was fun at the time, and it was, I guess, a development in technology, as in we have CD-based games now, so we have so much information and so on. Same with Steam, I guess, where your computer just plays a thing and then you make a choice.
Yeah.
One thing I noticed is that Doctor Who actors seem to be ending up in your projects, because you've had Mandip Gill in 5 Dates and Yasmin Finney's in Hello Stranger and even Derek Jacobi.
Yeah.
Is that something you were conscious of when they appeared?
Not at all. I'm not a Whovian? Is that the term for Doctor Who fans? Yeah, I'm not a Doctor Who fan at all, actually. I've never sat down and watched an episode of it. But yeah, it does seem to be that way, that a lot of people who've appeared on Doctor Who and been prominent parts of Doctor Who, I keep working with them. And they're all fantastic. So I would happily work with more people from Doctor Who. So long may that continue.
They'll be used to more outlandish concepts when they're making films.
Yes, exactly.
So specifically about Hello Stranger then, I've only seen the trailer, but it seems to be specifically a cautionary tale about how isolating technology can be and people not presenting their true selves online as well. That's what I got from the trailer. I haven't had the opportunity to play it.
Yeah, you're pretty much on the money, Craig. Again, I always like to try and be as the main character, Cam. He lives his life in a way that, especially post-pandemic, a lot of people do. And it's nothing to do with them being agoraphobic or an actual aversion to going outside or having real life interactions. It's just life has become, he's got this lovely smart home flat. He can work from home. He can exercise from home. He can have his food delivered to him. And he socializes with people on this chat roulette Omegle style application called Hello Stranger. So in his mind, he doesn't need to leave, really. And I feel like that's, hey, I work in the film industry. There are days where I won't need to leave or have to leave my flat and I don't notice it. It's something that is increasingly becoming a new normal. So I didn't want to present his lifestyle as something that was, to start with, as unhealthy, because there is a healthy way to do it. But as always, growing dependence on technology always leaves a back door open for not just the technology itself, but hackers and malicious people to take advantage of that. And that's more what's going on in Hello Stranger. Who we present ourselves online when we're just pixels on a screen is something that's a massive examination in Hello Stranger as well.
Yeah, and it's especially prominent at the moment with all the attention going on social media in terms of how do we regulate it and how do we make sure that we're speaking to genuine people, and scams that are out there and everything. It's just everywhere at the moment. Everyone has if not a direct experience, an indirect experience of being attached to this sort of thing.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I just got an email from Instagram today saying that he wanted me to do the 2-factor security. And I was just like, am I sure that this is from Instagram? Yeah. Then I started Googling, is this a legit email? So it's, they're getting so sophisticated now. It's really quite worrying.
Yeah, definitely. And there seems to be a connection to the rise of the screen life genre as well. I love screen life movies. I can't get enough of them.
I love screen life as well.
The attention being, or the perspective being from inside the screen. You see the character in terms of how they interact with everything on their computer. It seems to be what's going on here as well. And I guess this is an opportunity for you to make a screen life movie. Yeah,
absolutely. It's very much a hybrid. It's a hybrid screen life, live action film for sure. A lot of the stuff we did was obviously live action in terms of the camera being in the world with Cam, the lead character. But yeah, like you said, there's so much, and especially because it was interactive, and a lot of it hinges on these mini games that the hacker makes you play for survival. Then the screen life becomes something that not just you're watching the mouse move around and interact, but you are also doing it yourself for the character, as well as we have genuine mini games that you can pick up a controller and play that are intercut with live reactions from the characters. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of the genre. You think of Searching, Missing, the horror ones like Unfriended as well. It's a genre that I've always loved, and I think there's a lot of creativity that goes on in them, especially with the way you can use UI. So that was definitely something that was in my mind in terms of the construction of the project.
And the blurb I was sent for this says that you're doing physical screenings of it in cinemas and people get to choose using glow sticks.
Yes.
Have you piloted that at all? Is it something that's happened yet, and how did that go?
Yes, actually something we first did on my previous film, The Gallery. We played at a couple of film festivals, and yes, Hello Strangers, we screened it at 3 film festivals, and then we also were part of the London Games Festival last week as well, where we had a screening at the Genesis Cinema. So we've screened in Dinah in France, we've screened it at the Red Sea Film Festival in Saudi Arabia, and I literally on Monday got back from Brussels, where we screened at BIFF, the Brussels International Fantastic Film Festival, which is where White Chamber had screened 7 years ago. So it was a nice sort of full circle moment, and people are really responding to it. We had about 400 plus people in the screening at BIFF on Saturday, and they were a notoriously loud, rowdy crowd. But for this format, that's exactly what you want, giving the audience the chance, when necessary, to voice their opinions and to raise their glow sticks and interact with each other as well as the film. That's kind of what the ambition for the interactive cinema screenings is. And so far, so good. It's been really well received.
And how do the mini games work in that format? Is it just, they just play out as you would expect them to?
I'll obviously send you a Steam code, Craig, but you'll see at the beginning, there's 2 modes. There's a game mode and a cinema mode.
Okay.
So when you pick the cinema mode, you play the same story, but the games available to you are the ones that depend on binary choices. So like truth or dare, would you rather, choosing which ball the cup is under. But it means that you don't have access to the more gamey games, which involve a little bit more hands-on or a little bit more complex mechanics, especially the ones which are the ones where you need a controller or mouse and keyboard to play properly. That was sort of a new addition. I knew I wanted to delve more into the gaming side of things and incorporate more game mechanics, but I also wanted to retain something that could be experienced by a film audience who are more used to just pressing left and right and selecting. So that was how we kind of struck that balance.
And is there potential for the screening to be over quite quickly if the audience overwhelmingly chooses the thing that gets them killed?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. On this one, the way we do it is if you die, you go back to the decision that got you killed, but the number of times you've died is logged. So by the time we eventually get to the end, I was like, guys, you died 10 times to get here kind of thing. So that's always quite fun as well. Yeah, the runtime does vary depending on the path that you take, which is kind of interesting. We did 2 playthroughs back to back on Saturday in Brussels. There are 10 different endings. The audience got to see 2 of them. So they got a little bit of an idea of the big superstructure of the story, but they have a lot more to discover. So hopefully that encourages them to go and buy it on Steam when it releases.
And it'd be cool if that gets expanded outside of festival screenings, if it could become a general screening of, you can get interactive films in the cinema, because I know cinemas are hurting at the moment, so it would be an interesting gimmick to get people in, I think.
100%. I've been in this since 2019, and I've seen the format grow in that period. Right from the beginning, there was a lot of, I want to say, mistrust and people saying, this isn't the future, this isn't going to replace it. And I'm like, no one's saying it's going to replace anything. But I think, like you said, Craig, we're in this time now where people want different forms of content. They have algorithms on their TikTok and Instagram, which are showing them exactly what they want to watch. So if we don't give more diversity of choice in the cinema, they don't need to, because they have algorithms that are literally showing them content that is curated for them. So I think the onus is on the industry to give more of a diversity of choice. And that can be within genre, within story, within runtime, and within format and form. And I think that that's what we're finding. It's a really interesting time that we're talking now, because another thing that jumped out is the Minecraft screenings, where lots of teenagers are going in and shouting and screaming and throwing popcorn, which I think is too far. But what it's showing me is that they want to go to the cinema and not just lean back and experience something, but they want to interact, they want to get involved. Obviously, that's a bit unhinged and unregulated, but in the way our screenings work, there are regular junctions where you can raise a glow stick and vocalize what you want to happen and get involved with the games that you're playing and invest in that way. And what we find is people, they'll get involved there, but then once the choice is made, they go quiet again because they want to see the consequences of what they've done. So it would be more of an event cinema type of thing, but I definitely think there's a hunger for it, and I definitely think there's a growing audience that I think would be interested in this form of screening. So yeah, I hope what you predict comes to pass over the coming years.
Yeah, and the important difference between that and the Minecraft screening is you would go into an interactive screening expecting interaction. You wouldn't expect it to be deathly silent. I have seen Minecraft, and I was in a screening where people were popping off, and it drives me insane.
Yeah.
Feels like most of the time I go, someone's on their phone or someone's talking or
Absolutely.
whatever. I can't stand it. But if it was an interactive screening, I would go in expecting to not have that kind of sensory deprivation almost.
Exactly. And I think it's the age-old psychological thing that when you tell people they can't do something, especially young people, they're going to go and do it. Whereas if you're like, this is a place where it's legal to do this and it's encouraged, then you hope that the novelty of doing it, they fall into line with the structure of how it would work a bit more. You would hope.
Yeah. And the sense of community is important in cinemas. You have the Minion screenings where people would suit up, or Barbie, people go wear pink, or even just midnight screenings of big films where everyone's up for it.
Yeah, exactly. And as well here, you have experiential things here in London, like Secret Cinema. There's a food-based one where they'll play famous films and then bring you out food that is matching what's on screen. So you're watching Pulp Fiction and the hamburger comes out. I think especially with cinema screening, a modern audience is looking for more than just going and sitting in silence and watching a film in the way that we grew up doing it. I think the excitement of that to a modern audience isn't quite what it was for us growing up, because technology's moved on and people have grown up with projectors in their homes and lovely sound systems and everything like that. So I think we as an industry need to move with that. In the film industry, I think there's a lot of people who are still hoping that it will return to the good old days. But I just don't think history has taught us that that ever really happens. I think it's about trying to find a way to evolve while retaining tradition, but also incorporating new ideas. That's what I hope.
And in terms of the distribution, obviously you've been fortunate enough to get your films in front of audiences with the interactive screenings, but in terms of the Steam distribution, how do you find it in terms of just getting the feedback or getting the reactions? Obviously you'll get the reviews on Steam and things, but do you feel it's more staggered than it would have been if you released it more traditionally?
To an extent, yeah. Releasing to gaming platforms over the last few years, it's been an incredible ride for all my projects that go out there, because you have all these other ancillary platforms like Twitch, for instance. It was something I had to get used to, literally watching a huge audience play and react to my stuff. And obviously you saw some stuff that wasn't quite nice, but you could actually tangibly see what people liked and what people were responding to. And especially with the early ones like The Complex and 5 Dates especially, really went gangbusters on Twitch. There were some really great massive streams with tens of thousands of people watching it at any one go. As a filmmaker, it's great because you can tangibly see what's connecting and what's working and what you've done right and what you can maybe improve on. But also I think it's such a huge extra marketing tool that you kind of don't have really. I mean, I think in films now, if something goes viral on TikTok or X or through a meme or whatever, it's a similar kind of idea that is starting to work its way into film marketing. But I think having the ability for Twitch, 3 months down the line, a big Twitch streamer could play it or a big YouTuber could play it. And suddenly your sales spike and your reviews bump up on Steam and you go up the charts and the algorithm gives you more visibility. So in terms of sort of a lasting legacy, I definitely found with those films, there was months after the launch day where there would be spikes, so there would be peaks and troughs of new people discovering it and showcasing it, which I don't think you get in the film industry. You get your release, whether that's theatrical or whatever, and then maybe you'll get a secondary release on another streaming platform or something like that. But usually, especially if you're making an indie, you only get those two big moments, which is potentially theatrical, which is becoming less and less frequent, and then your first week on a streaming platform. And then after that, it's moving on to the next project, really.
Just becomes part of the ether of content because there's so much.
Yeah, exactly.
I guess you could do Twitch screenings even in future. You could just have people tune in and make choices using a poll or something. I don't know. I'm giving you ideas.
Yeah, absolutely. I've appeared with some Twitch streamers on, I think it was on 10 Dates, the sequel to 5 Dates, where I did an interview with a Twitch streamer and then I just sat and we did a playthrough with her audience, Katie Peters it was. And that was fantastic. And I think the film industry can take a lot of cues from that. I think directors and actors and stuff, you're starting to see it more in terms of them embracing those other channels for marketing. But I think a lot of directors should get on Twitch streams and talk to streamers or appear on podcasts where they maybe look at clips of the films and stuff like that. I think people really respond to that now. They want something more personal than directors and actors, there being a degree of separation. But I feel like people want to engage with humans a bit more. Ironically, in this very techie world, there's a reason why TikTok content creators and YouTubers are more famous and more influential than ever, because I think there's a human touch that people really like that I think the film industry could really learn from. And I found in the games industry.
Yeah, and it's maybe a reaction to the press tours for a lot of big films where it's essentially the same 10 questions being asked over and over again by different outlets.
Exactly, and it's all praise and it's all this and it's all, yeah, they're all looking immaculately styled and dressed and yeah, it's all very formulaic, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I've done a number of press junkets and it's like, what do I ask that people won't have asked before? And it can be difficult, especially
100%.
when you've only got 10 minutes to do it. You know, you can't really build a rapport in that time very easily.
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah, absolutely.
So in terms of your work through White Chamber, through the various game/films that you've made. You seem to have an interest in the themes of exploring society and the things that might tear it apart, or the things that people are being drawn to. The rotating dating scene, for example, in those two movies. Just this idea of the way that society is changing and the way that it actually works. Is that a conscious theme that you enjoy exploring?
I would say so. It's conscious and it's unconscious in a way. I graduated from uni in 2014, and in that 11 years now, the world has changed immeasurably in terms of society and culture and technology. The reason I think it's partly unconscious is that I'm just responding to what I'm seeing happening around me in a way, because the goalposts of what culture is are constantly changing all the time. But yeah, it is something that I am consciously interested in and observant of, and want to try and see how I can explore it and maybe predict where it's going, or review and analyze where it's been or what is happening at that present time. For instance, 5 Dates, we shot it during the pandemic itself. So it was people going on video dates because they were in lockdown, and that's the way we shot it. Literally, we shipped the actors iPhones because we had to do it all remotely. So it's something that I constantly I want to try and explore, because I think we're living in these incredible sociological times anyway, which you would think at some point should slow down, that things are going to get to some kind of normalcy, but maybe not. Maybe this is just the new status quo. And I guess I always kind of want to be looking inward and sometimes a bit forward, rather than trying to set my films in a world that is long in the past, basically.
Yeah, and not to get too political, but it does feel like every day something insane happens at the moment. So this idea of things are changing, they're changing very quickly and they're changing very unpredictably. So yeah, the pandemic, video dates thing, and I spoke to actors that did the Zoom movies over the pandemic, and they were talking about how they had to do every job suddenly. Yeah. They had to be their own makeup person and so on.
Oh yeah. 5 Dates, they were incredible. They were incredible actors, because they were doing the job that would be covered by about 8 or 9 people on a film set. They were lighting themselves, they were doing their own mics, they were doing their makeup, costume, we were sending them props, so they were dressing their backdrop, and we had a DP on Zoom with them who was telling them how to adjust the exposure on the camera that they were shooting on. So yeah, it was a really incredible feat that the actors achieved on that.
And it gave birth to a whole new type of filmmaking as well, which is amazing.
Yeah.
Necessity being the mother of invention and all that.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's totally what I believe in.
So what's going to be next for you? Are you planning to do more video game interactive movies, or are you going to go for something more traditional, or do you not know at this point?
So I've got another interactive film coming out this year called The Run, which I shot last year in Italy, which is really exciting. Hello Stranger releases on 29th of May on Steam, and then The Run is going to release sometime later in the year. So that's my immediate project after Hello Stranger. And then after that, actually, I sort of have, for the first time in a while, a bit of downtime currently. Obviously, there are things floating around, but I would love to go back and do a traditional linear film, purely because it might be easier on the synapses in my brain, because I haven't done it. I did White Chamber. I directed that when I was 24 and I'm 32 now. So just as a person, I've changed. Obviously, as a director, I've got more experience and improved and grown creatively and personally. So it would be great to go back into that format and just see what I can give to it. But I love interactive. I love FMV. I love Choose Your Own Adventure as a format as well. I'm so passionate about it. And if that's the next thing I'm doing, then I love it. But if I also get the opportunity to go back and make a traditional film as well, or a TV series or whatever, that's something I would jump at as well.
So you're going to keep your options open and
just see absolutely. Where it comes. Yeah. Exactly. Choose your own adventure.
Exactly. Yeah. Just make sure you pick the right choice.
Exactly. Yeah.
Might get run over by a steamroller or something, whatever happens.
That's always the danger.
So the last question is one that I always give to everyone, because we're a nerdy podcast that deals with comic book stuff. So if you could have any superpower, what would it be and why?
I would usually say flight, because I just think that's the most incredible one, to be able to see the world from that perspective, to be able to travel places easily, to be able to get out of a jam quickly is great as well. But I think that's quite an obvious one. So one thing that I've always, it might seem like a quite minor power, like in the world of X-Men, I wouldn't be one of the X-Men, but I'd like the ability to make any unhealthy food healthy, or any healthy food unhealthy.
I would love that.
I think that would be a power that would make a lot of people's lives better, including my own. So yeah, I would say that's the niche, really, really trivial power. If I could have something, I would do that.
Just eat everything and it's only 100 calories per thing that you're eating.
Exactly, yeah, and it's all full of protein and vitamin C. Donuts are a superfood and everything like that. I feel like that would be a well-appreciated power.
We've never had that one before, so that's a great one. Well, thanks very much for your time. It's been great talking about this exciting medium of interactive movies and the themes that you enjoy playing with and so on. It's been great having you on, so thanks very much for your time.
Oh, thank you, Craig. Anytime. Thank you so much, and amazing questions.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks.
That was my conversation with Paul Raschid. All the best to him for his future projects. If you like what you heard, please subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or anywhere podcasts are found. Please also leave a 5-star rating and a comment. If you want to discuss anything brought up here or anything else, you can hit us up on Facebook, Twitter/X, or BlueSky under Kneel Before Blog, or leave a comment under kneelbeforeblog.co.uk. You can also join us on Discord. For more interviews like this, a monthly news podcast, and deep dive analytical conversations about your favourite nerdy things, please continue to join us on Kneel Before Pod.